Very welcome to you all, and I hope you all are taking good care of yourself. This is a little troubling time, as you would know that COVID has again started, spreading, and especially in Maharashtra and all. So I hope you all are taking good care of yourself. As you know that this is the seminar in which we are going to talk about technical paper and how to write a technical paper and all about what entails in a technical paper. And joining me here would be Dr. Vikram Pattakine, and we will be sharing our experiences and our thoughts about what is a technical paper and why is it so important. So I am Amit Kothari, and I'm the founder of LabDocs, and I have been in the industry of edutech and laboratory innovation for the last 18 years. I am also served as mentor for change in Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog. I have held various positions as startup leader. I've been program lead in the startup leadership program, and our idea was also selected in Y Combinator. Recently, I got an opportunity to be an evaluator in Toycathon. In various capacities, I have been involved with providing solutions and engaging with various industries like industrial automation, instrumentation, defense, research and development, biotechnology, agri-technology, and so on and so forth. So, guys, as I told you that this is about the technical paper and how it is important and what are the things that really consist of a technical paper. So we are going to talk about all of that. Uh, Basic guidelines about today's session. I would request you all to keep your mic muted, although we have already muted you, and there is going to be a chat box that you could see, and if you have any question that you want to ask in between, you can put your question in the chat box, and we'll be happy to take up your questions, and we will try to answer them at the end of the session, right? So a small introduction of Dr. Vikram. Yeah. So he has been doing a lot of things in his entrepreneurial and academic journey, and he has helped many people like me. And he started his journey way back in the 1990, and since then he has worked with various prestigious companies and organizations. So he has a PhD in environmental engineering from Virginia Tech. Right now he's residing in USA in Pennsylvania. He has more than 25 years of international experience covering consulting, R&D, technology assessment, and various other things related to environmental and water. He has been a board of certified environmental engineering member. He has been awarded US citizenship through recognition of extraordinary ability through sustained national or international acclaim. He is also a mentor and coach for entrepreneurs and startups in water, energy, sustainability, edutech, nutrition, health and wellness. And he happens to be one of our mentor for one of the health brand that we have, which goes by the name Sattva. And he's a very well-known coach in the space of wellness, nutrition, and well-being. So this is a very brief description and introduction of Dr. Vikram. There are a few surprises, guys. So I would request you to stay till the end. There is going to be a demo in which we are going to talk to you about how, in today's world, the bigger companies utilize their ATS. ATS is acronym for Automated Scoring System for Resumes. And we would be doing that demo because we also employ one of those technologies, because we usually receive around 500 to 600 resumes every month for our various open positions. So we're going to tell you about how it is important to put the proper words and proper structure in your resume, and why the resumes are really rejected. So please stay till the end, and we are going to be doing a demo. It is going to be really interesting, and we are going to show you one interesting technical paper, which is a CV, and you will be really surprised to know that that CV has around 43 pages. So, people usually submit like a journal which has 43 pages, but here is a CV which would have like 40 pages, and how it has 40 pages. So for that, you will have to stick till the end. All right, so I'll start with a small introduction of LabDocs. So LabDocs is basically a edutech platform And we are helping learners to acquire engineering and entrepreneurial skills from core engineering, scientific research, and emerging technologies, sectors and industries. So we are probably one of the few companies who are completely focusing in engineering technologies, as in factory ready technology and skill set. And not only that, we are also helping people to get acquainted with entrepreneurial skills and management as well as leadership skills. So we are the very few companies who are not only helping people to be ready for employment in an organization, but also help them to be ready with starting their own startup journey. So we have a lot of programs. We have modules in emerging technology, and our mission is basically to help learning acquire skills that can help them to become ready for work. And these skills are basically mapped to industry requirements. These are few of the focus areas: Industry 4.0, drone technology, clean tech, agri-tech. These are, as you would know, these are the emerging technologies, and there's going to be a huge demand for all of these sectors in the coming new age. And these are another few of the focus areas. Although we started, it's been like a couple of years as far as the journey for LabDocs is concerned, but you will be really pleased to know that we are one of the few companies in India who has been recognized and been associated with these global bodies like Future Learn, Y Combinator, IDC, Startup Leadership, Women in 3D Printing. And these are some of our industrial partners and collaborators. So the idea with our work is such that we tie up with or we collaborate with directly from the manufacturers or OEM, and we curate our learning content coming straight from the OEM side, so that people would know that what is in demand, and these are the things that are really required in any industrial application. So our courses are specifically designed as per the industry demand and requirements. So we keep on conducting various webinars and various programs. So most of our content are technical in nature, but we keep on getting requests to start something which would rather help professionals and as well as entrepreneurs if they are looking to start something new in their career, or they are looking to start or go in the way of a startup. So that's why we recently, since 4-5 months, we have started doing a lot of entrepreneurial programs and digital adoption. As you guys know that digital adoption has become really important, and it is very critical in these times, especially when we are hit by COVID. So there is not going to be a single one who would not have a digital identity in the world right now. And it is very important to have a digital identity and to have an adoption, whether you are seeking to work somewhere, whether you are looking to start something. It's very important that you have a digital mindset with you, not only the leadership mindset, but as well as the digital mindset. So we keep on doing that, and that we also have a very engaging career development program. As I told you, that we keep on hiring interns from all walk of life and from various domains and various countries as well. So we have our interns coming up from Malaysia, Indonesia, France, US, UK, Nigeria, and various other African countries. And they work as our brand ambassadors, they work as our content writers and various other positions. So we have started a career development program in which we have our interns join us and learners join us, and we usually do it for 3 months. And in the 3 months, we try to develop or help them learn some skills that can help them to, improve their resume. So, guys, there is no point in doing an internship which is not really going to help you in your resume. So we see that when someone is doing an internship with us, they get the specified skill set that can help them in their journey, right? So I'll just run through the the overview of this session. So we are going to talk about the purpose of this session, the skeleton, the basic bare bones of what we are going to cover. What is the sequence? As I told you that we are going to first cover why is it important to really understand what is a technical paper and what really consists what does a technical paper really consist of, and what is comprised in a technical paper. And Dr. Vikram is going to talk to you about research paper and how do you write a research paper, how do you submit a research paper, what are the things that are really required in research papers, and all of that, and what are the important parameters. So, guys, I quickly ask you a question, and you can I'll request you to use the chat here, and let me know what do you think is a technical paper. What really consists of a technical paper? Is it really something that is scientific in nature, or engineering in nature, or it could be I leave that to you. You can let me know what do you think is a technical paper. So I would request you to maybe answer that on chat. Yeah, guys, please take a jab. Anyone tell me that what is a technical paper? What do you think that is a technical paper? Okay. Ome has mentioned it's a deep description of a concept. That's a very accurate definition. Ome. Thanks for that. Yeah. So technical writing is basically a communication written for and about business and industry. So anything that you are writing while you are working, or while you are trying to target an industry or a business. So whatever you're trying to write or convey your idea for a business or by a business is basically a technical writing. Now, not necessarily that you are always going to be writing in the context of business. There are instances when you are going to be doing things when you are pursuing your academic qualification, like maybe writing a CV. Now, why is it really important to have that technical aspect in place of a CV? I'll tell you why. Because nowadays people are these bigger companies. The majority of bigger companies, they employ automatic scoring system. And what this system does is that it will take your resume and it will map up with the requirement or skill set that are placed in the JD. And if you're not really matching with the JD, your skill set is not matching with the JD, it will reject you, or it will brand your score as below 90. And believe me, guys, when we say below 90, you will be surprised that below 90 is a good number. I mean, if someone is scoring like more than 70, it is something like a decent number or decent score. But usually, if something is below 90, we don't give a second look to that. There are things that we would be talking about why we don't really give emphasis to people who are scoring below 90. We will be talking about that in the end. But absolutely, a CV is also your technical document. So basically, anything like written instruction manual for repair. It could be an instruction manual for repairing machinery, a memo listing meeting agendas, a letter from a vendor to a client. All of this would consist a technical writing, or it would define as a technical write-up. So some of the examples of technical writing are memos and email, letters, reports, instruction brochures, newsletters, job application, web pages. Yeah, whatever you're putting in your web page, that also entails as a technical writing. Is technical writing a necessary component of every employee's professional skill? Absolutely, yes. So when you are hired, when you are hired as a graduate or fresh graduate, so you will be spending at least 20% of your time in writing. And what you write is really important, and how it is conveyed, that is also really important. So you need to understand that your writing is not only concise, but it is also to that point. So that is why we say that you try to cultivate that habit when you are in your college or when you're in your school, so that by the time when you're hired, your writing is really crisp and up to the mark. And when you grow up in the ladder of corporate, then you would see that managers would be spending 50% of the time in writing, and CEOs would spend like almost 80 to 100% of their time, and which is absolutely right, because that is what we do here. All right, so this is a small graph of what is creative, what is the distinction between creative writing and what is technical writing. So there are two kind of concept guide. One is called connotative writing and denotative writing. So denotative writing is something that what you really want to convey. and the definition is as per se. So whatever you're writing, it means the exact thing. But connotative is something that could be expressive. Um, it could mean you would write something, but it could mean various things, or it would have various definition for people who are talking or people who are interacting with that particular word. So, like when we talk about poems, plays, and stories, so these are example of connotative writing, and that's why it is not specifically denoting a concept or a description here, but it is a thought process, or it is a creative analogy of a writer. So that's why it is the traits of a creative writing would be it is a connotative and expressive words, fictional characters, imagery, and plots. But when we go down here and we see that what is a technical writing here, so technical writing example, as it says that these are memos, letters, reports, instructions, resumes, and web pages. Why? What are the traits? These are objective. These are written about product or services. It is about your personal journey, as in your professional journey. These are short sentences. That's why it has to be crisp. And these are paragraphs, and it would use denotative words. So purpose of a technical writing is, you would see that when we talk about literature is for pleasure, essay is for enlightenment, news stories for being informed, but technical writing is to getting your job done. So when you are submitting your resume, you are looking to get hired. So that is what the purpose of a resume. So these are some of the purposes of technical paper. It is to share ideas, data, results, clarify thinking, and improve research quality, allow us to understand our research more deeply, and of course, developing writing skills. So with that note, what I would request Dr. Vikram to probably start your presentation from here. And if you could say a few words about something that I might have missed, it would be great, Dr. Vikram.
Thank you, Amit, for inviting me to be a guest speaker. I will take the presentation from here. So let's look at the research paper skeleton. Since I've had the good fortune of writing a few research papers, I'll be able to share some of my experience while we are going through this PowerPoint presentation. Okay. So this is the research paper skeleton. What are the components of the research paper? You see, research paper is also like a story. So when you are trying to tell a story, we want to tell what the story is all about. What is the message? That message has to be conveyed from the title itself. So in music, they say that the first note you perform, that first note itself has to be able to tell you what rag is going to be performed. All right. So in the same manner, our title has to be very concise, and also it has to convey what we are going to tell. I think, Amit, you are probably pointed or pinpointed on this screen. So my video is not showing at all. And your video is also off. So therefore, nobody can see anybody's video. So if you can allow me to show my video so that my video will appear next to the
Sure. I'll just
screen.
do that.
I think you are pinned or you are highlighted or spotlighted for everybody. I'm not. Okay, so now this is better. So now you have spotlighted me. So now hopefully people can see me right next to the screen they're watching. I can see my own photographs, so I know that hopefully everybody else can also see. So let's go through this title and keywords. Those are very critical, very crucial. You have to have a catchy title so that people will be interested in looking at what you are looking at. So I'll give you my own example. I receive so many emails all day long. So if the email subject is interesting, then I will open the email. Then after that, See, the next item on this list is abstract or the paper summary. So if the first 2 or 3 lines in that email don't interest me, then I don't even read the email. Okay. So first, if the subject is not okay, then I'm not going to read it. If the first couple of lines are not okay, then I'm not going to read further. If it generates further interest, which is what, then you look at this introduction. In that introduction, we need to say clearly why we are writing this research paper. In the introduction, we have to also tell about what other people might have done in the past, what is the major contribution of those people in that field, and then you also talk about how this whole paper is organized. Okay. Go back one step here. I have written about the abstract. So it says, remember, most people read only the abstract paper summary and then decide whether to read the whole paper or not. I'm exactly like that. So if I see a good subject, I'll see and then I'll read the abstract. If it is interesting, then I'll read further. Okay. Within the introduction, you have to give these 4 different things. You know, why you're writing the paper, what people have done, what is their contribution, what are the things that may be lacking or what needs to be done further. That's what you need to focus on. Then once you have identified the problem, okay, people have done this and there are certain shortcomings or these are the gaps in the knowledge, and we want to, through our research, we want to close those gaps. That is how the research paper will have to be written. Then we tell people how we have done it. So this is the problem, how we have gone about solving that problem. Okay. Then you write about the protocols, the experimental procedures, and you have to also write about what are the equipment you have used and also mention which brand equipment, which model and all that. So if somebody else wants to repeat the same experiment with your protocol, with the same equipment of the same brand, using all the same conditions, they should get the same results. That is critical. Otherwise, it cannot be a proper research paper. And only those research papers where multiple people have verified what we have done, only then that becomes a landmark. Otherwise, if we write something and it is not true, then if people find out, then nobody will believe our research thereafter, right? So the number one rule of any research document, any research paper or any document for that matter is honesty and truthfulness. All right. Once we've done that, then we will write about the results and discussion. That's the most important part of this whole document, right? So in the results, we will give either figures or tables. And then I think somebody is moving the cursor on the screen. So that is distracting. So let's not do that while I'm talking about it. And then after that, once the slide is, maybe you can talk about the point I'm talking about. There you can have your cursor if you wish. So in the results and discussion section, we want to tell about what we have found out. And from that, what we have learned, discuss the results. So that is the most important part of our research paper. Once we've done that, then we can write the conclusions. What have we learned? All right, next slide, please. So in the conclusions, we will write about what we have found out. So normally what I do is I read the abstract, I read the conclusions. If that's of interest, and if I want to learn more about how they have done that, then I'll go and read their experimental procedure and things like that. Okay, go ahead. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Dr. Vikram, can we start a small poll
Yeah,
before
go ahead.
to? So guys, there would be a poll that has appeared in your screen. So there are 3 questions. One is a multiple choice question. So we would request you to probably answer those questions and then we can take it ahead. Okay, are you guys able to answer the poll?
Somehow I'm not able to answer the poll myself. Maybe the hosts or
Yeah,
co-hosts are not
the
allowed to
hosts are
answer.
not right. Right, it could be because I am also not able to answer.
Correct, that's fine.
All right, so for another 10 seconds, and then we can probably stop the poll here. All right. All right, cool.
All right, at the end, we have to write also about the acknowledgements. Who has helped us with this paper? We also have to write about references, which papers we have referred to in the past. And then the format has to be based on the journal style. So we can go further now. Before you start writing the paper, we have to ask ourselves, am I ready to publish? Do I have enough data or do I have enough information from my experiments to be able to share with people? You see, I'll tell you a small story. When we are in school, sometimes the professor or the teacher is so bad, we feel like taking some paper, making a ball out of it, and we throw at the teacher because the teacher is so boring. Right? Many of us must have thought about it. At least maybe we have made some aeroplanes and we would have thrown them at the teacher, right? Because the teacher is so boring. Now, if that paper ball, before we make that ball, on that paper we write a word, S-T-O-N-E, stone. Okay, and then make a ball out of it and then we throw. Will it hurt? It will not. Now, if we actually enclose and wrap a stone in that paper, okay, and make a ball and then throw, will that hit? Of course it will hit. Why? Because the word and the meaning of the word, they have become one. So when the meaning of the word is indicated in the word, then the word becomes powerful. When does the word have that weight? That weight comes only through experience. So unless I have experienced what I'm talking about, the words will have no meaning. So therefore, before I start saying something, communicating something, writing something, I have to make sure that I have experienced it myself. Okay. So when we write about our own experience, our own understanding of the subject we are talking about, then our writing will have the desired effect. That's what will happen. So first we have to be convinced that we are ready to publish, we are ready to talk. Then which manuscript type is the most appropriate? See, it depends upon what we are doing. So if we are writing an essay, it will be a different manuscript type. If we are writing a news article, it will be different. If we are writing a technical paper, it will be totally different. Okay. We also have to look at who is our target audience, whether it is a conference, if we are going to make a presentation at a conference, or if we are writing a paper for a journal. Paper for a journal is going to be more detailed. Okay. Paper that is going to be presented at a conference will be different because it will have to be condensed into a PowerPoint presentation. PowerPoint presentation format is totally different. Most people or a lot of people have seen in the PowerPoint presentation, they will write almost a paper. That is not the way to make a PowerPoint presentation. PowerPoint presentation has to be totally different. In each slide, there has to be only limited content and you talk about that content. So in a PowerPoint presentation, you have to focus not just on the PowerPoint, but also on the speaker. See what the speaker is saying. Okay. We also have to check the author's guide. So every journal may have a different style or maybe different guide for different authors. I mean, for their journal. So we have to conform to whichever journal we are submitting to. We cannot use the style of a different journal and submit to a third journal. They will not accept it. So we have to be very careful. Next slide, please. Now, what is a strong manuscript? See, it has to be clear and useful for others. If I cannot write clearly and if it is of no use, see, you have come here to learn about what is a technical paper. If I start talking about some other subject, then this is not useful, isn't it? So I have to stick to the subject. I have to be clear and I have to be useful to you. Only then this whole presentation will be of interest to you. Otherwise, you run away. It has to be presented and constructed logically. So this entire team has gone over this PowerPoint presentation a number of times. They have revised it and made sure that it flows well and things like that. That's how this presentation was created. It has to be presented and constructed logically. It has to make sense to you, isn't it? Then reviewers and editors can easily grasp the scientific significance. Only then that manuscript will be strong. Otherwise, if the reviewers, I have reviewed many papers because I'm on the review board of many different journals. Just because I have been an author of many papers, then editors of those journals know that I have done some work in this area, so they will send papers for my review written by other authors. And then once I read the paper, I go through this myself. If it is not clear or useful, then I will say, not worthy of publishing. If it is not constructed logically, very difficult to understand. We have to be able to easily grasp the scientific significance. See, because I happen to be in that field, and if I read a paper, I may be able to understand with my own experience and intelligence in that field. Okay. But the common person may not be able to understand. So then what we do is we go back to the authors and we say, we need to revise this manuscript, make it simpler to understand, easier to understand, and then resubmit. Go ahead. Next slide, please. Okay, so how to write this technical paper? A lot of times, unfortunately, our education system tells us that we should write long things or long essays. If the paper is long, then we get more marks. That's how somehow our mindset is. That's not true. We need to write concisely, precisely. Everything we write has to have some meaning. Otherwise, it will just be words, mere words. Okay. We have to write with clarity, objectivity, accuracy, and brevity. Whatever we want to say, we must say that in the fewest words possible. That's what brevity means. Okay. If we write direct and short sentences, that's great. We should avoid multiple statements in one sentence. So don't make compound sentences. If you can break the sentence into two, break the sentence into two. It's easier to understand. Okay. Use active voice to shorten sentences. If the journal style allows, then use active voice. So passive voice means it has been found or we have discovered or we have observed. That is passive voice. Personally, I like passive voice because then the author is behind the idea. The idea is more important than the authors. Okay, so if you look at our own Veda, what is the most ancient literature on this planet? The Veda, right? Veda was written down by many different rishis. We don't know any of the rishis' names. Okay, because from their point of view, the subject was more important or is more important than the author. All right. But when you have to write more concisely, we have to write a smaller paper, not a long paper. If active voice is allowed for that journal, if you feel comfortable doing that, you do that. If you can write the same paper in passive voice in the same length or fewer sentences, then by all means do that. All right. Avoid abbreviations such as it's or weren't or hasn't. This is colloquial. So it's okay when we speak to each other in this language. All right. But when we write a scientific paper, you cannot do these short forms. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. See, this is the paper structure. This is how a paper is typically structured. So there is a title and abstract and keywords. This is for easy indexing and searching. It has to be informative, it has to be attractive, and it has to be effective. As I said, even in the first slide, you have to make sure that your title actually conveys what you want to convey. Then in the main text, you write introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Again, you have to remember that journal space is precious. So make it as brief as possible. Why do you want to make it long? If you can convey your idea in the fewest possible words, that's the best thing, isn't it? Then conclusion, acknowledgements, and references. So that's the paper structure you have to follow, especially when you're writing a research paper. Next slide, please. All right, so I will go through a bit more detail about each of those items, right? So introduction, you have to provide the context to convince the readers you are clear why your work is useful. I have to be clear about why I have done what I have done. Otherwise, how can I convince somebody else what I have done? Okay, so here we have to be again brief, and we have to clearly address these points that you are seeing on your screen. What's the problem? What people have done in the past? Hmm? Are there any existing solutions? What are the gaps? Which solution is best? Where is the limitation? And then through my research, what am I hoping to achieve? So that's my objective. So that comes in the introduction. Next slide, please. Then the methodology. So how did I study the problem I had defined? Okay, how did I go about solving the problem? So here we have to be quite detailed. We have to make sure that we publish what we are writing. If we have used the exact same method as somebody else might have done, then we can refer to them. So saying that we have conducted this experiment based on the method given by such and such. Okay. You don't have to describe that method unless it is really important as far as your description thereafter is concerned. Otherwise, just say refer to that method saying that I have done it using this method. Okay. After that, you have to identify the equipment and describe the materials used. Okay. So you have to tell how many grams of which powder you have added to which solution and things like that. So you have to be very detailed about that. Okay, so anybody who is reading that paper should be able to repeat that experiment. All right, next please. Okay, what have you found? Those are the results. Those results are typically shown in tables and graphs or charts because it's easier to understand the results in that manner. Okay, so we have to present our own results, the essential or primary results. You have to also use equation editor for writing equations. So if you are writing some equations, then you use the equation editor. That is useful. Okay, and when we present the results as tables or graphs, then it's easier for us to see all the results in one go, in one picture or one table. So you present your results like that. And then next, we will talk about discussion. So next slide, please. In the discussion, this is the most important section of our research paper. Okay, what do these results mean? What do I learn from these results? Okay, how do I compare these with what people have done in the past? Okay, then in that discussion, it will become clear what contribution I have made or the authors have made to the field. Okay, that's what the discussion is all about. Next, please. After that, then we can write the conclusions. Okay, so based on the results we have discussed all this. We have learned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things. Okay, so here also we have to write clearly. What have I learned? How our results or our conclusions have advanced the field of knowledge. Okay, and we can also suggest future experiments saying that, okay, we have come up to this stage and then this is what needs to be done further. So either we are going to do it or somebody else can do it also, isn't it? So that's, even when I wrote my PhD thesis, this is how it was written. So conclusions after that, recommendations for future work. I'm not doing it because I've done my PhD. I've worked hard enough, long enough. I have analyzed all of my information. I have extended the field of knowledge a little bit based on the time I had. And then thereafter, somebody else can pick up. It's like a relay race. You take the baton from the previous generation or the previous authors, you take it a bit forward, then you give it to some other people who are going to take it forward. Next slide, please. So references, you have to cite the main scientific publications on which your work is based. Okay, so whatever you have used in the past, you have to make sure that you write down how that journal wants you to write down. Okay, in my case, when I wrote the PhD thesis, the university had a certain manner in which you had to write the references. So you have to write the references in that manner. So typically in a research paper, you'll have at least 15 references because you will have studied those many papers in the past, hopefully. Otherwise, how can you say that, you are taking the work forward after what these people have done? You may end up, if you don't refer to all the work that has been done previously, then you may end up repeating some of the work, and then your paper will not be accepted. They'll say, okay, somebody else has already published this, so this is not useful for us. Okay, you have to avoid excessive self citations. So if you refer to your own work and write your paper, then people will say, he's so engrossed in his own work and selfish. So we should not be like that. Okay, we should make sure that we refer to the work done by many other people. And of course, if your own work is relevant, you refer to that. It's not that you don't refer to your own work, but you refer to other people's work also. You have to include recent references. Don't include the references from the ancient past, unless those are, of course, relevant to what you're doing right now. You have to include all the references of the work that has been done in the past. And then again, at the end, you have to conform strictly to the guide for authors. Okay, next, please. All right, the authorship. You have to make sure that all the authors are listed. You see, if my rule of thumb is, or my guide, PhD guide used to tell me that if you write the first draft, then you become the first author. I will be the second author. But if you cannot write and I have to write the first draft, even if it is your work, I will be the first author because I have written the paper. Okay, so that's how it is. Typically, if I write with some younger people I write now, then I will ask them to write the first draft because I would like them to be the first authors because it is useful for their career and their own resume. Then I'll end up rewriting the whole thing about that. Sometimes I've done that, but I still allowed the first author to be the person who wrote the first draft, even if the draft may not have been up to the mark. That's okay. They will learn. So that's how we also move forward. The entire field moves forward. Knowledge moves forward. We all become enriched because of that. Okay. See, if we make changes after the paper is accepted, then those may not be accepted. So we want to make sure that we write the authors properly in the order in which they are relevant and then submit. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of the suggestions for the figures. When preparing the figures, try to keep them as simple as possible and use a single font. Don't make it multiple fonts, and then people will get lost in the fonts and they will actually lose the actual meaning that you want to convey from the figure. Remember, they may eventually be printed, so you have to try to avoid needless shading effects, which will make them appear blurry. Okay, so don't do that unless you can provide a digital copy, original copy to the editor, and then they can use that. Or you have to make sure and use your common sense and judgment whether you want to do this beautification or not. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, what is good writing? Good writing is thoughtful. Your thoughts are clearly expressed, so there is clarity of thought. It has to be persuasive. So the reader has to be interested in reading what you are reading, what you are writing, and they have to understand what you have written. Okay, so you have to be economical in both words and structure so that people don't get lost in the words and the structure. In fact, the words and structure should be frictionless. Okay, then they won't make too much noise and your thoughts will seamlessly go into the head of the reader. The language has to be correct, grammar has to be correct, punctuation has to be correct, spelling has to be correct, syntax has to be correct. Otherwise, whatever we want to convey to the audience will not get it, isn't it? It has to be appropriate. The tone has to be right. You have to avoid verbosity. So don't take too many words to describe the small idea. Okay, that you can do in a story. You can make a film out of it, but you are writing a technical paper, not making a film. All right. It has to be readable. The text has to be flowing smoothly. Reader can tell where the paragraph is heading. So even see, there has to be a structure of the sentence. There has to be a structure of the paragraph. An excellent book on how to write is called Elements of Style by Strunk and White. That's available on the net also. You can look it up. If you read that book, use that as a Bible, then your writing will become very effective. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, how do you compose? Okay, composing 101. You get your ideas onto paper, into paragraphs and sentences, and then we have to make sure that they flow nicely. So even if the first draft may not look all that great to you, you have to revise. You have to take things further up or further down depending upon where they belong. You write down all your ideas first, and then you structure them properly. What I do typically is I write down the skeleton first. So I write down the ideas or the titles first. You see, introduction, then I've already given you, or the research papers are written in that manner anyway. Introduction, materials and methods, then experimental results, then discussion, then conclusion. So within those sections, you have to now populate those sections. That's how I do. So if I'm writing a different kind of document, then I will write down the skeleton first. See, even in this PowerPoint presentation, you saw what were the contents of this PowerPoint presentation. And then each of those things we are now elaborating. That's how it is. Okay. Notation. While composing, you have to be consistent, and that notation has to be suggestive. Typically, what I do is when I use a short form or an abbreviation, in the very first place, you have to define it completely. So you have to write the full form of whatever you are going to talk about in the very first instance. And then you write that in parentheses and then use the short form thereafter in the document. Okay. In a sentence, you have to be consistent and the structure of the sentence has to be simple. As I said earlier, avoid complicated, complex sentences, long sentences, compound sentences. Write simple sentences. You have to be clear. There has to be clarity. Next slide, please. Composing 101 continued. How to cite. The citations have to be based on the style of that journal where you are submitting your paper. Okay. In reference list, you have to write different types of publications, complete information, including pages, year, publisher, no abbreviations, unless the journal wants you to abbreviate the name of the journal or whatever. Okay. Then the formulas should be treated as regular text. Okay. And then you have to write the equation number at the end. All right. So you have to make sure that the equation or the formulas we are writing, they are clear, they are clearly understood. You can use the equation editor as we have told you before. And you have to write the equation number, because if you are to refer to that equation number later in your document, you can say that equation number so and so said that. So that's how you refer to it in the document itself. Then figures and tables. You see, a picture is worth 1,000 words, correct? So your picture will convey a lot more information than what you can convey in your words. Always use meaningful captions. Okay, so the caption should tell what the figure or the table is all about. Explain the figure. So after you've shown the figure, then you explain that. What do you learn from that? What you should look in that figure, okay? Or what you should look for in that figure. Then denote the meaning of the axis. This is especially true when you are making the presentation in a conference. So then you say, okay, on the x-axis, on the y-axis is this, on the x-axis is this. Then you talk about how the graph is telling me what I want to tell. All right, so that's how you have to explain a figure or a picture. Go ahead, next slide, please. After all this, you'll have to revise. You don't know how many times we have revised this presentation, okay? Many times. You have to read the draft sometime after the first writing. And you read that draft as if it is written by others. And then you have to proofread. I proofread, then somebody else proofread, somebody else proofread. So proofreading has to be done 2 or 3 times by different sets of eyes. Okay. Of course, I should proofread what I have written, but then I should let somebody else also proofread. And if they find out the mistakes in what I have done, I should not be upset. That's very important. Otherwise, you will not improve. So the person who is criticizing you is your best friend. All right. So in a research paper, in a technical paper, while somebody is proofreading your document, you should not be upset. Let them proofread, let them point out the mistakes. Okay. Read for cohesion, logic, comprehension, whether it reflects your intention, and check citations. All of these things have to be checked. Okay. Read with one rule at a time. Go through the proofreading many times. Okay. One time you go through one rule. Whether every sentence has been ended with a period or a full stop. Whether each paragraph or whether there are excessive spaces between paragraphs. Just check one thing at a time. Go through the whole document. Then pick up something else and go through the whole thing again. Get someone to read it for you if you can. Okay. And you have to plan to rewrite at least 3-4 times. Even now, when I write something, I usually revise it. Even WhatsApp messages, sometimes I'll revise. Okay. So you have to be careful. Next slide, please. Now, another important thing, plagiarism. You should not plagiarize. You should not pick up words and sentences verbatim from somebody else. Okay. You have to write your own sentences, your own ideas, your own language. Everything should be your own. To check, you can use the software, whether somebody has used the same language before. So if you do that, then your paper will be rejected. Okay. Go ahead. Next slide, please. Now for the ISBN and ISSN, I'm going to let Amit talk. So,
Sure,
Amit.
Dr. Vikram, and I hope that everything is going in a smooth flow and as we have planned. I would really request people to shoot out questions, although we have received a lot of questions, and we are going to take up those questions in a while, maybe at the end. But if you have any questions, I would request you to put your questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them. In the meantime, while I am just starting with the ISBN, there is a poll coming up. I would request you to all participate in the poll so that we can understand you a wee bit little better. So I'll just be starting this. I hope you could see the poll questions here. We're getting some questions here. So Dr. Vikram, there is one question that has been asked by Shubham. He is asking, while searching for a topic to write a paper upon, what things should be kept in mind? Although we have kept some of the question for the end, but would you like to answer this
Yeah,
question?
definitely. In fact, why are you searching for what to write about? You have to write about what you have done or what you have experienced. Don't try to write about something that you read unless you have been asked to review something and you have been asked to write a review article. You don't have to search for what to write. You write about your own experiments. That's what you should write about. Okay.
Great. So guys, this is a very subjective thing. ISBN and ISSN. There is a lot of emphasis that's being given nowadays about ISBN. ISBN is basically international standard for booking number. Now, these are the numbers that are given to published books. Now, whether you are, publishing a fictional book or you are publishing a journal, chances are that you will be given an ISBN number. But what is the importance of an ISBN number? It is just a tool to keep a stock of your book or published book metadata. So it would have details like publishing house, the title name, and then what is the publishing time and year, and so on and so forth. So as a stockist, I would really be needing ISBN number if I am a book stockist or I am a book reseller, so that I can tally up with my entire account that I have. So Rashmika is asking where can she get the ISBN number? So ISBN number is highly protected thing in India. So there is only a couple of institutions who are issuing ISBN number. We have prepared some documents with here, and we will be sharing those documents with you, Rashmika, and you can probably go through those documents, and it has all the details. What is an ISBN number? What are the application of ISBN number, and where can you get it? So usually it is issued free of cost, and people give a lot of emphasis on it. But as a writer standpoint, or if you're a researcher standpoint, it is not something that is going to really add a value. It is like it will make you sound or look really professional if you are submitting a book, guys. I'm again emphasizing this point: when you are submitting a book, but when you're talking about submitting a paper or just a journal, then the journal will probably become a part of a book or a compendium. So even if that ISBN is issued to the author, you will not be, recognized over there. You will not be recognized unless until you have applied for ISSN number. ISSN number, on the contrary, is a number that is given to your article or a small article that you are submitting. It could be a series, it could be for a series also. So ISSN stand for International Series Number. Now, when you're submitting a ISSN number, it could become a part of your ISBN document. So not necessarily when you are submitting something, you would be really needing a ISSN number. You can really do it without getting ISSN number, and you will be surprised that 40% of the book that are available online, the ebooks that are available online, they do not carry any kind of ISBN or ISSN number. But if you are really working with an author or with a researcher, and who has an ISBN or ICCN number, and you are probably helping that person with an article, then it is good that you go for an ISSN number. What you should really do is you should go for a DOI number, which is a digital identification number, or digital identifier. So here it helps you to get a lot of metadata, a lot of details about your digital identity of that paper or research document that you have published. So that will be your digital identity for your research paper. So you should probably go for that DOI. Now, the real game changer that is going to come is the ISCC, the International Standard. The International Standard Content Code. So this is something that is really coming up new. People have been, started doing this. It is a decentralized format. It is a highly secure format. It is like like how the bid documents are made, or the digital lockers are made. So it consists of that. So once you have this number, you really do not have to go for or chase a government institution or a body to get this number. Once this is in place, all the numbers and all the publication documents is going to go through ISCC, which would be highly protected, and it can be shared without any fear of being compromised, or without any fear of plagiarism. So it is going to be like your Bitcoin, but it is going to be a Bitcoin for your research work. So that is how it is going to be. And if you guys are really interested to go for something, then you should search for ISCC, and how which are the institutes, and which are the people or the bodies. These are really like Wikipedias of the world who are doing things for free. So you can approach them, and you get your ISCC number and DOI number. That would really help. And if you are really looking to add a professional attribute to your write-up, then you could go for an ISSN number. So that is the basic difference between ISSN, ISBN, and ISCC. Yeah. So yeah, Dr. Vikram. So probably would you like to go through the 5 trade rubric, to summarize all the things that we have discussed so far?
Correct. So this might be a bit tricky or hard for you to see. Is it possible to share this slide with people later who ask for it? See here in this
we
trade,
will be doing that. We will be doing that.
correct. So here in this rubric, we are talking about the clarity, conciseness, accessible document design, audience recognition, and accuracy. So all of these things have to be kept in mind while we are writing our technical paper or even when we are doing our presentation. So I think it is better to share this document with people, those who are interested, because it's very hard to read. We'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so CV is one of the most important aspects for a professional. I've spent most of my life writing CVs because as a consultant, you have to write a CV that addresses the client requirements. Okay, we have to tell the reader in short about our skills and abilities. So sometimes I have to write a one-page resume to address a certain request for proposal. Sometimes I have to write a two-page resume, and sometimes I have to write a longer resume. So if you look at a professor's CV, you will see many, many pages. I've seen people who have 1000 or 1500 publications. All right. So I'm nobody compared with some people who have written extensively. All right. But whatever you do in your life, you have to be able to document it properly. So if you document it properly, then you will have a very detailed CV, which Amit will share with you. And then the more attractive and truthful it is, the more impact it leaves on the reader. So these are the characteristics of a good CV, right? Next slide, please.
Yeah, so I think, Dr. Vikram, we have reached to the end of the slide, but as promised, I am going to showing them a demo about how to build a really good and impactful CV. What I would do is I would request Irina to probably, she can start with the question that has been asked by and which are sent to us. So Irina, if you're there, can you put up the question to Dr. Vikram, and he can probably take up those questions.
ना पैसा
Yeah, Irina, are you there?
Yeah, go ahead. Are there any questions
कैसे
we
माँ
can
बाप
answer?
हैं यार बाबू मतलब खुद का खुद
I'll just take up the questions here. I think I have the questions here. I'll just take them up here.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so there is a lot of confusion when people ask that what is really. Although we tried here to explain that, Dr. Vikram, that is it really? Does it say that when we talk about technical paper, does it always mean that only researchers or people who are into science and engineering, they are the only people who are going to be writing these papers, or is it for everyone? When we talk about academic life cycle of a student, how important is a technical paper for a student here?
Great question. Technical papers are written in every single field. Okay. When you go to school or when you go to college, you are reading something, are you not? You're reading a textbook. That textbook is also a technical writing sample. All right. So each and every field of education will involve technical writing. And within that field, there is a certain style. So that style will need to be followed. I come from the engineering background or scientific background, so I write technical papers or I have written technical papers in a certain manner. But every field has its own syntax, its own style, and you should follow that style. But in general, any piece of writing has to have those major components. Why we are writing what we are writing, then what we are writing, and then what we are learning from that. So those three things have to come through quite clearly through any piece of literature. Thank you for that interesting question. Next.
And I think we have covered this. Someone has asked, what are the components of a research paper and what's the way to go about them?
Right. So therefore, maybe this presentation will be available as a recording on YouTube. So you can refer to that when it is released. We have gone through all of that during our presentation itself. Thank you.
Ratna has asked about the indexing of the papers.
You see, indexing, I'm thinking that you are asking about citations or what we have referred to in the past. So referencing or referring to the papers we have read as a part of our work, all of those papers we have to cite at the end. And then of course we have to mention what we have learned from them. So in our literature review, we will say that such and such author has found out such and such, right? So we list all of those findings in our introduction or in the literature review. And then from that we say, okay, I have reviewed all this literature. There are certain gaps, and these are the gaps we wish to address in our research. So that's how the citations, the references will be incorporated in our technical paper. Next.
Right. Another question from Ratna is how to write a research proposal for a grant. And she has generally asked like how to write a letter for PhD before applying.
Both are good questions. So a grant proposal will need to make sure that you are addressing the request for proposal for the grant itself. See, typically the grant giver will come out with a request for proposal. Okay, so here many government departments, either whether it is in the US or whether it is in Bharat, everywhere the person or the agency that is giving the grant, they will say, okay, we are soliciting or inviting grants in this subject for this particular topic. So then what do I have to do? I have to respond to that particular request for grant. And then I will say, I want to do this research in this manner. So you have to, in that grant proposal, you have to write the approach you are going to take. You don't have to necessarily give the details of the experiments you will do, but you have to write the approach. And then what do you anticipate or hope to achieve through the research? Okay. If you can tell a good story about how you are going to address the question that they are asking you to answer, then your grant proposal will be successful. Okay. Typically, the grant proposal request will also give you what items they would like to see. They will also give you the structure. They may. If they don't, then you have to create your own structure based on what we have learned in this class. Okay. So that is for the grant. For the PhD research, see, typically in the US, when you are applying for a PhD program, then you have to write what is called the statement of purpose. In the statement of purpose, you have to essentially address two questions. Okay. Number one, why do you want to do a PhD? Okay. So if I want to do a PhD, why do I want to do a PhD? I have to be quite clear. So then I also have to express my interest in that subject. Okay. I also have to be clear about after I learn this, what's going to happen, how it is going to help me in my further career. So why do I want to do a PhD? Secondly, why do I want to do the PhD with this professor or at this university? Okay. So you have to, in your mind, be clear that this is a good match. I want to work with you, Mr. Professor, because you have done this work in the past and these are my interests. Your interests are matching with mine. I would really love to work with you. And I'm capable of doing the research because this is my background. So in the statement of research, you have to tell a bit about yourself, tell a bit about why you want to do this, and tell a bit about why I want to do it at this particular university or with this particular professor. So that's how your letter or the statement of purpose will need to be. Next.
Shubham has asked a very interesting question. He's talking about how can he select a guide for a research paper. He's an undergraduate student, and it is really hectic for him to find out or do a research for the right guide who can probably help him in his research paper.
Correct. So typically, go ahead. Is the question over?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, he also asked that is it necessary to have research paper already published before applying for foreign universities?
Okay, so there are two questions. So let's take the first question first. You will select the guide based on your research interest. So if I want to learn physics, I'm not going to go to the English teacher, no? So whatever I want to pursue or whatever research I wish to pursue, I need to find out the professor who has done research in that area. Okay, that's how I will choose the professor. And the second thing is, repeat the second question again.
He's asking, is it necessary to have research papers already published before applying for foreign universities?
Well, if you have the research
before applying for
done, and
foreign,
if you have, you don't have to have it published. You
right.
will have your master's thesis published, of course. So when you are applying for a PhD, you will have been working on your master's research thesis at least. Okay, even if you have not published it, by the time you end up starting your PhD program, you will have finished your master's thesis. Okay, but based on that master's thesis, you may or may not have published an article, but you may have written a manuscript that might have been submitted for publication. So manuscript submitted for publication can be written as a part of your CV or resume. So whatever publications you are working on currently, you can say that these are under preparation. You can do that also. So it's not necessary that you will have published something before you start a PhD or apply for a PhD program. If you've already done that, great. I mean, you will end up doing that if you say work between your master's and PhD. If you work for a couple of years, then by that time your publication based on your master's research will get published. So that will of course help. It's not that it will not help. But if you want to do a PhD right after your master's, then you can say, okay, these are the manuscripts under preparation. That's okay.
Great.
Next.
So I think, can we take a couple of questions at the end? I think people are asking for the ATS, the CV thing. So I'll just
All right,
quickly share my screen.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all right, guys. So this is something that you all have been waiting, and people have been pinging me. So guys, this is one of the most AI driven software that is there in the market for human resource management, and also for giving score to the applicant. So we usually receive around, as I said, that 500 to 600 application in a month for different positions that we have. And to screen them manually is going to be really tedious job for us. Although we have a very heavy HR team, we have around 8 to 9 members in our HR team, but still to screen them manually, it would take a lot of toil. So this software is like a godsend for us, and it does all of our work because of its AI engine. It does everything for us. So I'll just show you an example. How do we really select a candidate for various rounds? So usually when we are selecting a candidate, there are 6 rounds. You would see that first is sourcing, applied, screening, assessment, interview, and offer, and then finally the hire. So these are 6 to 7 rounds that a typical candidate will have to go when they apply at us at any of the given position that they have. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to upload a candidate's profile here as to give you a demo. So see, this is one of the resume that I'm going to upload. So one very important thing, guys, very basic thing. This is something that we also are facing on a daily basis. And most of the time, there are people who are sending their DOC file or the doc file or the Word document. So it's a strict no. Whenever you are sending your resume or cover note, you should always send it in a PDF format, because other formats, most of the software, they will not be able to recognize it, and your resume will not be shown or will not be visible, and it will be rejected straight away. So yeah, so keep that in mind, and always prepare or if you have made it in your doc file or Word doc, convert it into a PDF and then send it to your employer hiring agency. So see, now we have uploaded this file, and now the AI engine has already taken the detail that it needed. So it has recorded the career experience. It has also recorded what is the applicant interested in, some of the academic background. It is not very clearly defined. That's why it is not coming up here. and the skill set. So I'm just going to press OK, and I'm going to upload it because I'm doing it manually here. I'm uploading the resume manually. That's why I have to do all of this by myself. Otherwise, people usually submit it through our portal. So they just submit the details on the portal and they submit the resume there. So we don't have to do this manually here. So I'll just show it to you how it works. So I have uploaded this resume for our graphic designing intern. Yeah, there it is. So guys, you will see that some of the candidates have got more than 90%, 92%. So Niharika has got more than 92% score, and we are definitely going to go ahead with the next step for Niharika. For this candidate, Saksham, it says NA, so we are not going to give this candidate another chance because most of the skills or most of the requirement are not here. We have to do a lot of manual work, so we might just skip it. Now this is a resume that we have uploaded. Now see, it has scored less than 72% or less than 90%, so it is just 72%. So although you would think that it is a good score, but it averages out. So if you go to the details here, you would see that in the job title, it has not been mentioned what is the job title this candidate is applying for. So that means that he or she is not really serious with the position that he or she is applying. The degree is not being mentioned. The skill set is only coming at 57%. And the other requirement might be matching, so that's why it has scored an average of 75%. But because of these red things, we will not probably go ahead with this candidate. I'll show you why it is so. So when we go here and see resume, see how it has been submitted. No name, no nothing, no position, just a university name. What is the scored 60%? I mean, the computer will not understand what is 60% is unless until you mention CGPA or something. Scored 77%. So these are the words that you should never be putting. Scored is something that it could mean many things. It could mean that you played a football match and you scored something. So that's why the computer is not taking up, the AI engine is not taking these things. And skills is communication skills, excellent analytical skills, business acumen, result oriented, proficient with Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Windows, iOS. So the computer has, the AI engine has carefully matched the skills that is presented here in the CV and what was our JD, right? Now I'll show you for someone like Niharika Chauhan. If you go there, although she has not mentioned the job title very neatly, but the skills here are matching 100%. And other parameter which are not listed here is giving her a good score, which is far beyond 92%. And look at the way she has mentioned. The career experience is very nicely mentioned here. And when you go and check the resume, see the formatting of this resume. Although I would have preferred that she should have mentioned the CGPA, and she could have mentioned a thing or two about the internship that she has done, about the work that she has achieved. So usually what happens is that people just list out the work that they are doing, not what they have achieved. It would really help if you can talk about in the past work and you can say that what you have achieved. So you can say that if you are a digital, say if you have applied for digital marketing, so it is good that you mention that you help the company in getting followers, 5,000 followers in a month, or you help the company from reaching out from 5,000 followers to 10,000 followers in 1 month. So if you mention those things, that will be the highlight, and I would be really interested to understand more how you did that, right? So here the person has mentioned the usage of the pen tool. So okay, I understood that this person has some knowledge about the skill that she has been using, and the other person project that you have mentioned. Now, guys, when you're talking about your personal projects, so you should not just go and be shy. Go and put in detail about what were the personal projects that you have written. So there is, if unless until it is said that you should be submitting your resume, just a one-pager resume, then is the only place where you're going to be shy with the length of your resume. But if it is not mentioned about the length, then you can take as many pages as you want. I'm literally saying you can take as many pages. So anyway, the AI will be taking care of all the mapping, and if it is at all attractive, then people will be going to see in details. And why I say that you should take as much of space, because I'm going to show and share something with you which is very unique. I have at least not never come across a CV which has 43 pages, right? And that happens to be of our beloved Dr. Vikram, and I would not imagine anyone else be doing that. So guys, let me share this with you, a 43 pages CV. So this is the entire gist of Dr. Vikram career so far. So this itself is a hallmark of a very good CV that you can put, or rather a technical document that you can ever write. So look at the way how it has been neatly indexed. Someone was talking about how indexing is done. So this is a very good example of how indexing should be done, how you structure your document. See, the highlights of the qualification is placed, and these are an interactive document wherein if you open this document and click the links, it would take you to the referred piece of article. So these are the highlights of his qualification experience. Nicely put and neatly organized. You can see all the thing that is mentioned. What is the year? So guys, you should always mention in which year you did, or in which year you accomplished anything, or your achievement. That should be very aptly put. The details about what kind of work that you did over there. A very interesting point of this CV is how Dr. Vikram has not only put the details of the various workshops and seminars that he has been conducting over the period of time, but also the experience that the learning and the experience that he has been getting by attending so many webinars and sessions. So that is also a very good thought or a process that you guys can adopt. So, I mean, if you have got any value after attending this webinar, maybe in your CV you can clearly mention that you attended this webinar, and these are the learning that you achieved after attending this webinar. Yeah. So here all the documents and all the research papers and all the publishing has been nicely put. Here are the seminars that he has done, and it is just a partial list. Various environmental engineering seminars that he has attended and given lectures to. These are technical management training that these are training that you have given, Dr. Vikram, or these are the one that you have received?
Technical and scientific. This is the technical and management training which I have received.
Right.
Earlier,
So,
there was the training programs which I have conducted, which I have given to people.
right.
So
So what
technical
you are
and
giving,
management training I have received is also a huge list, because I need to maintain that list for my continuing education credits, because I am a member, board certified member, right, of the Environmental Engineering Academy. So
right.
it is compulsory that I keep updating my own knowledge. So whatever webinars I attend, I write down so that they will also know that, yes, I've been attending these webinars and learning. So continuously learning is very important in our field.
Absolutely, and that is very important. Like what you are learning, even if it's a very small thought or a small tidbit, but because it is also improving your CV, and it also giving a indexing of what you have learned. So this also shows. I mean, when I'm reading this, I understand that you're giving value from where you're learning. So that is very important. So in one resume or in one CV, I understand that what kind of thought process is going behind your head. So that is very important. Great. So this is something that I wanted to share with you guys, and this is a very unique document that I have ever come across. A very unique CV. I really thank Dr. Vikram of sharing this with me. So here are some of the languages that he is. I mean, Jesse here. He had also mentioned the countries of work experience. Although he has a, valuable experience of running career of more than 30 years. So these are so many countries that he has gone to. The extracurricular activity very nicely put. Yeah, these are seminars and webinars that you have conducted, I believe. Great.
Correct. So these are the
So,
extracurricular seminars or webinars I have done. The curricular
right,
webinars are in the beginning. So this
right,
is an entire document of my entire career. See, I will tailor this. I'll cut things out of this before I send it for a specific proposal. All right. Because not everybody is interested in everything, but I need to have a documentation of everything I have done in the past so that whatever I want to pick from that for a specific application, then I can pick from it. So this is the master copy. And then I have, as I said, I have a 2-page resume and I have a 1-page resume also.
right. Dr. Vikram, this is also something that that usually we don't come across. Can you share about your thoughts of writing experience summary? And is there something that you know people here, the student, the young student, can also probably write an experience summary and maybe give an enhancement to their CV?
Right. So for experience summary, you are actually helping the HR manager who is looking at your resume. Okay. What I would do, you don't have to have a big matrix in this manner, but you can do job description on one side and you can write the positions we have held on the other side. Okay. And then which job description item matches with which position you have held in the past. Do those tick marks. Then the HR person can say that, okay, in this job, you have the experience that addresses this particular job requirement. If you can do that, that will be a great thing.
Right, right. So this is something, guys. I mean, please make a note of this experience summary. And next time when you're submitting a resume, even if it is asked or not, I mean, submit an experience summary. See how it works. I mean, see, these are the persuasion techniques that you can, or you should rather adopt when you are given one opportunity to prove yourself. It is just a document that, as a recruiter, we will be receiving, but something out of the ordinary would really hit us, and we would be really interested to at least know the person. So make a note of these, and I hope that you are going to have, from next time onwards, you're going to have a improved CV. If you like, you can send us your CVs and we will do a random check, and maybe we can run through a software as well, and we will let you know what are your scores that you are getting through ATS, so that you can improve. uh, this is going to be something that we could do, because you have attended and you've been a nice audience. This is something that we can always do for you.
The one other thing,
Right.
Amit, I would like to emphasize here. See, now I have done this webinar, I have taught you, right?
Right.
This one item will go on my resume after I finish my resume. So you have to keep updating it all the time. So here you will see the last lecture I gave for Sattva was last month. So that last lecture is listed in this CV. Whatever I do, immediately I update it. So it keeps on updating itself.
Right.
So go back to extracurricular, just go back one page, I think. In the extracurricular, you have these webinars, right? So look at the last webinar. No, not that far. Not that far, not that far. Go towards the end. So go down. Okay, in this section, just go up a bit. This last section has these webinars. Okay, go up a bit, slightly further up, slightly further up, slightly further up. So here it says seminars and webinars, right? So these are the extracurricular webinars I have done. So these do not pertain to the environmental engineering profession I do. So the last webinar I did was spirituality, what, why, and how. This I have done for Sattva in February, right? In March, we haven't had a webinar yet. We will have one next week. So that will
So
come.
we are having this webinar, so maybe you can put this over there.
This will not be as a part of my extracurricular activities. This is a
Right.
curricular activity. So this will go in my main seminars and webinar section.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I also try to classify what I do in which section. Okay. So if people are interested in looking at my extracurricular activities, they can go to this section. If they are interested in looking at what kind of seminars and webinars I have given in my profession, see how to write a technical paper is a part of my profession. So this will go in a different sections. So go back to the bottom of this page and there is a thing called go to the contents. So click on the back to the contents thing. If you can click on it.
Where
On the
is it
bottom of
exactly?
every page, it says back to contents.
Right. Yeah.
Can you click on that?
No, I don't think I can click it here because I
For
think
this, you
I
are in a
have.
preview mode. You are in a preview
Yeah.
mode. Okay. So if you
Right.
open this document in the PDF viewer,
Right.
you will be able to click on this back to contents. This is a hyperlink that takes you all the way back to the index or the table of contents. In the table of contents, you will see seminars and webinars. There are two different sections for seminars and webinars. One is in the curricular section and one in the extracurricular section. So whichever you want to see, you can go and click on that and that will take you to that section. So this is hyperlinked, completely hyperlinked. So this is like a small website in itself.
Right. So
Thank you.
Jyotipreet, how to make hyperlink in this kind of resume? So there are PDF tools where you can use
No,
these
this is,
PDF
hold
tools.
on, Amit, this was not done in PDF. This was done in
Okay.
Microsoft Word. In Microsoft Word, you can do hyperlinks within the document. See, most of us use Microsoft Word or a computer as if we are using a typewriter. It's not a typewriter. Microsoft Word has many tools. So within the document, you can insert hyperlinks. So within the document, if you click on a hyperlink, it will take you to another location within the same document. All of these things are possible to do within Microsoft Word. This table of contents was actually generated by Microsoft Word itself. I didn't write it down. I just made sure that each of those items was listed as a heading, and there is a heading level number 1, heading level number 2. All those things you have to learn. If you want to really use Microsoft Word as a tool, you need to understand what that tool is capable of. Otherwise, what will happen? We will use the wrong tool for the wrong purpose. If I want to nail a small nail in the wall, we have to use a different kind of hammer. But if you go to a jeweler shop, they use a different kind of tool. If you want to weigh something in the laboratory, you have to use a chemical balance. But if you have to weigh an elephant, you are still measuring the weight, but you have to take the elephant to a dharamkata, isn't it? So that's how you need to understand which tool to use where. Microsoft Word is an excellent tool. Don't use like a typewriter.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that Dr. Vikram, that and others also, there are so many templates that you can use from Microsoft Word. So if you are writing a memo or if you are looking to write a CV, so you don't really have to design your CV. You can just select the template and it will open up the details for writing a CV or a memo or a technical brochure or a research paper. You just need to select the template and it will populate the necessary details.
Correct.
Now the same thing would also happen with the Google document. It also gives you a lot of features as far as selecting a template is concerned. So whatever you're using, whether it is a Microsoft Word or Google Doc, it allows you to use the templates. Great. Guys,
Any
before
other
we move
questions we have? Do we have any other questions?
yeah,
Because we've already
we have
done more than 1.5 hours. We were going to do it for no more than 1.5 hours.
yeah. So
So
we
if
will
there
just
are
take the
questions, we will
last.
take them. Otherwise, people
Yeah,
can see the video recording
right.
later.
Yeah. So there is this question that Shubham has been asking a lot of question, and he is asking that he's asking what are the instruments required for experiment. Uh, okay, what can we do for tackling hiccups which may arise during the research work? Like some instruments required for the experiment are not available, or uncertainties clouding the research results.
Okay, so if there is uncertainty in your own mind about your own research, then unfortunately you will not be able to publish it. Okay, so you have to be completely sure about your own research. You have to be completely sure about what you have learned from your own research. If you are not confident about what you have done, how can you convince somebody else? Isn't it? So unless the instrument you are using is well calibrated, it will not give you the correct result. I'll give you an example from our health and wellness I gave many times. If you eat 1 spoonful of sugar, okay, thereafter, if you drink a cup of tea, even if it is very sweet, you will still not taste the sweetness. Why has this happened? Because your tasting ability, your sweet tasting ability in your tongue has been reset. Okay. So when you eat sugar, then the 0 point of your scale of your tongue's sweet tasting ability gets reset. Okay. Therefore, the tea doesn't taste sweet thereafter. So that is why when you are measuring something, the measuring instrument has to be well calibrated and it has to be sensitive. Only then you will get the correct result. So before you weigh a little, pinch of powder on your chemical balance, that chemical balance has to be reset to 0. Okay. And then you add the powder. Then only you can measure the accurate weight of that powder. So that's the answer to your question.
Right. So we'll take one last question here, Dr. Vikram. It says where to publish technical papers written by us.
Okay, so there are many different journals which allow publication of specific different topics. Okay, so for example, if you want to write a paper in my field, environmental engineering, there are 2 or 3 different types of journals where people send different kinds of papers. If that paper is not journal quality, if it doesn't have the kind of research rigor, then it may be good enough to publish in a conference. So it may go in a conference proceedings, but it will not be good enough to go in a journal. If you're writing on general science, you see people publish in a magazine called Nature, which is published from the UK, or there is a magazine called Science that is published from the US. So people will try to or aim to write their articles to be published in these, but they may or may not be published in these because the competition is very tough. But there are other journals in which you can publish your research. Beware of online journals because many times they will ask you for money to submit your research. So those are worthless. Nobody pays any attention to those and nobody will acknowledge those either. If your research gets published in a peer-reviewed journal, only then that research paper will have any value. Okay, so you be careful. In your field, your teacher will know or your professor will know which journal is appropriate for submitting the paper which you have written. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Amit?
So I think that was the last question we have time for. But
Great.
before we go, can we request everyone to probably start the camera, and if they are okay with it, and we can take a screenshot and we can share that with everyone.
Correct. So if everybody can turn their videos on, that would be great. Wonderful. Nice to see you all. We see some people outside and wearing masks, so we should congratulate those.
Great, guys.
Wonderful. Nice to see all of you. Great audience, and thank you for sticking to us until the very end. One of the verticals of LabDocs is called Sattva, which is an initiative we have started of diet purification to mind purification to self-realization. If you are interested in that topic, by all means, go to sattva.life, sattv.life. There is no end, there is no A at the end of Sattva. So it is SATTV and not SATTVA. Okay, so sattv.life, LIFE. If you go to that website, you will see what we are doing in terms of health and wellness. You're most welcome to join that program if you feel interested.
Great.
Thank you for attending this program. Great to see all of you.
Great to see all of you, and thank you so much, Dr. Vikram, for taking out time here. We have created a group, WhatsApp group. So I would request you to come on any of these days whenever you have time. And people would have a lot of questions. So many of them could not join today's session because of various reasons, but I'm sure they would be interested to know a little more and or maybe in detail about the research work that they are doing. So I would request you to come on board for a couple of days or maybe for a few hours, and we can take up some questions over there. And guys, we will be sharing all the details in the WhatsApp group that we have created. If you are not already on that group, you can check your email. We have already shared the details. Great.
Incidentally, let me tell you about a small IT magic we have created here. Okay. So you see Amit Kothari's picture under LabDocs, and his voice is coming through Amit Kothari. So there are two different screens, two different devices he's using. One device is to actually say something, and the other device is to show you something. Fantastic.
Great. So thank you so much again, guys. And I hope I hope and wish that you all stay safe and
have a wonderful evening, everybody in Bharat. If somebody is here from the US, have a good day. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, everyone.